Speaking of AOC, you brought up AOC. She recently appeared on the Majority Report. I appreciate that she's done some new media appearances lately with shows like yours, and also I think she went on Hassan. Maybe I'm mistaken,
No,
but I
she
think
went
that
on
was
Hassan, yeah.
pretty recent too. So she's definitely better than most progressives in Congress when it comes to actually going on shows like the Majority Report. I mean, I remember Cori Bush. She actually came on the Vanguard. She was like the fourth ever person to come on the show, but it seemed
Oh,
like
that's so
she.
cool.
Yeah, I know, right? It was such a sweet thing of her to do. She was obviously running at the time, and that was right before she got into Congress. But then once she got into Congress, it seems like she, didn't really want to maintain a relationship with new media. Not us, obviously. We didn't expect her to come back, but I felt like there should be a little bit more coordination, given how important the space was to Bernie's rise and to his movement and all that kind of stuff. So, I was just wondering about some of the stuff that AOC did say on that interview with you and Sam. Some people, kind of, I guess, took offense to some of her comments, or they
I don't even
misinterpreted it.
remember. What did she say?
Okay, well, there's one thing she said about how basically this is not a moment for progressives to necessarily be bold. We need to pick our battles, almost kind of implying that, like, hey, we lost. It's time to regroup. It's not time to be that kind of fiery, intense left flank that a lot of people have, historically demanded she be,
Right.
and in our opinion she's failed to live up to.
I think that we are presently in a moment where we have to be really ruthless about what battles we pick, and we cannot pick all of them. And I think we have to be realistic about the political moment that we are in. There are moments where we have the juice to be bullish, and then there are moments where we need to like really strengthen foundationally and preserve. This was a tough year for us. And it's not just about big money. It's about, like, organizationally on the left, we are in a challenging time.
So I'm just wondering what you thought about that. Do you kind of agree with her assertion that the left needs to not retreat, but kind of rethink things and refocus our energy? And if you do agree with that, what should the energy be refocused on? Like, what policy specifically, or what issues specifically should the left wing activist movement focus on? And what stuff do you think she was referencing should be kind of excised or left behind due to its unpopularity or whatever?
Right. I think what you've jogged my memory. I think that was an answer to Sam's question about her vote on the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, where she voted in favor of that, and I think Sam, in posing his question, was saying that he disagreed with that vote and tried to challenge her on it, and that was her response, was essentially saying that she would have, if it was to codify the HRA, again, I'm paraphrasing, HRA, the definition of anti-Semitism that conflates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. If it were to codify that as the official definition, she wouldn't have voted yes. But she voted yes, and she said it without saying it, right? Because she has bigger ambitions, and because she's making a strategic choice. And, if I were to be asked this by you guys, like, maybe 5 years ago, and I probably would have been outraged and said, no, you don't take these kinds of votes based on strategy. You don't take these kinds of votes. You don't make these decisions based on, like, these calculations that seem kind of obscure, right? But I do think that if she hadn't done all the more important work before this of trying to block arms sales to Israel, calling it a genocide, right? That it would be more problematic. But given her position and the fact that I do think either she wants to run for president or she wants to run for Senate and take Schumer's seat, that would be my guess. And I don't know how long Schumer wants to remain in office. I can understand the reasoning behind it. And I liked the forthrightness of that answer, specifically when I guess maybe it was a year and a half ago at this point, we did an interview with Ro Khanna. I did that with the Progressive Victory people. I mean, Brianna Wu was involved. I would not do that today. But when I was asking Ro Khanna a question about his fundraisers with David Sachs. I was pressing him on that. He basically said, I'm not going to stop doing those fundraisers. And for me, like, I appreciate the candidness of that answer, but it's a little bit disqualifying in my view. AOC, I don't think is at that level. I think she has a fundraising apparatus that is a huge behemoth and a big chip that she tries to use to her favor, and she's trying to play this inside game. And I'm not somebody that is against the idea of playing the inside game. You know, Elizabeth Warren is not a very, I would say, talented politician on the stump, but secretly, like, she's one of the best inside game politicians that we have today. I don't think we would have Lena Khan as the head of the FTC without Elizabeth Warren endorsing Biden and working behind the scenes for that. I mean, that seems to be what she got in exchange. And
AOC or Elizabeth Warren?
Elizabeth Warren.
Right, that's what I thought.
Yeah. And so for AOC to continue to build power in that way, she does need to make some of these hard decisions. If she abandons progressive principles altogether, we're going to have a different conversation. If she says, I'm going to do a fundraiser with David Sachs, like what Ro Khanna said to me, and I'm going to keep doing it. Like, all right, that's a little disqualifying for me. But for this, it's one vote. You take it.
For sure.
You take it for what you can. And I don't agree with it, but I also am not in her position.
For sure. I'm not so concerned about, those little nitpicky things like, oh, one vote here or there. Obviously, every congressperson, every senator is going to have a few votes that you can pull up like out of context. You could say Bernie Sanders just voted for Marco Rubio. He's a sellout. Obviously, Bernie's not a sellout, even if I disagree with that decision. I guess what I'd be interested in is, you talk about AOC's next steps, running for president, potentially replacing Schumer. Do you think that's a good idea? Like, from the perspective of the left, is she the right leader to elevate or get behind? Because there is a lot I like about AOC, specifically with what you said, kind of on the vibes-based voting. People seem to trust her. Even people that vote for Trump like her. But it does seem to me, to give her a little bit of a criticism, it seems like she has been playing this inside game for a while now without much to really show for it. Like Elizabeth Warren, you can point to the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau. You can point to the Lena Khan thing. With AOC, it's like, I don't really see much tangible wins.
They just rubbed her face in shit snubbing her for her congressional, you know what I mean? So, like,
no, I actually do like that she's doing the inside game thing. And I probably would be doing the same if I were in her position, because like I think she's only been in Congress since 2018, right? Seniority is a rule in House leadership in the amongst the Democrats. It's like way more, I would say, ossified than the Republicans, who turn over their leadership on a whim. They don't have the same rules. So there's just like they're two different institutions. And I think within the Democratic Party House institution, a lot of what she does makes sense to garner more influence. Now, there's a ton of problems in the party, and it's not going to get fixed overnight. And the Democrats are in like the worst position that they've been in since, I don't know, like 2004, but even maybe you could go to pre-Clinton eras, right? You could talk about the Reagan era. It's a horrible position that they're in right now.
It's like 1980 out there.
Yeah, but that's not a result of the progressive movement.
That would have been Carter, yeah.
Right. Like that is, Bernie Sanders is one of like the greatest politicians and like visionary politicians that we'll ever see in our lifetimes. But Bernie never really tried to do the inside game. And do I think that hurt his ability to make change at certain points? Potentially, right? I mean,
under Biden, I would say he definitely played the inside game. Right?
He did, but so did AOC. And they did things that I didn't agree with. Like both Bernie and AOC were trying to keep Biden in the race, if you recall.
100%. We were blasting AOC for simping for Biden when we wanted him out of the race.
And Bernie, yeah.
And Bernie too, yeah.
Right. And then it comes out a little bit later. What she was alluding to was that Nancy Pelosi wanted seemingly to install Gavin Newsom, right? Like she didn't want Kamala Harris to be the nominee at all, and wanted to do some blitz primary with one of her favorites. And it would have been like, everybody gets a favorite. Josh Gottheimer gets a favorite. Jim Clyburn it would have been chaos. Like the situation that we were in that scenario was the only way we could have come out with a small d Democratic outcome would be to have Kamala Harris be the nominee because Biden screwed us over so badly. Because a blitz primary wouldn't have been us voting. Like, newsflash, that's what AOC was warning about. It would have been smoke-filled rooms and like Nancy Pelosi and these folks putting up their kind of like favorite corporatist Democrat, not to absolve Harris of any of this at all. But the point is I think that was what Bernie and AOC were trying to do with that strategy. I don't know how effective it is, but at the end of the day, did they pay the price at all? Like, does AOC would pay way more of a price, I think, for the people that she wants to win over in the Democratic coalition if she were to have stabbed Biden than than what she actually did, because she still has the progressive credentials, but she didn't piss off the normie Democrats. And I guess my final point on this is like, the Democratic voter base is not where we need them to be. Like, they worship Michelle Obama. They worship Nancy Pelosi has like a crazy high approval rating within the Democratic constituency. Like, leftists and people trying to work to make the party better, they unfortunately aren't in the driver's seat sometimes. And like, there's a lot about being a Democrat and being trusted by other Democrats or elevated by other Democrats that is favored by some people in the base. I mean, this is the base that was saying how Bernie bros are sexist and horrible and not true Democrats, and Bernie's a liar, and ended up voting for Joe Biden at the end of the day. So the Democratic voters in primaries, it's just like a very distinct group of people that, to be an insider in that game actually elevates you, even if it may hurt you outside of a Democratic primary if she were to run for president. Does that make sense? I've done 3 shows today, so
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I don't want to pivot too hard because I think that there's a lot that we could examine about the Democratic Party in particular. But while we're on the topic of AOC, one thing I did not see coming was Elon Musk sig-hailing at the first inauguration of Donald Trump, right? And it seems to me that one of the byproducts of all the things that we've been discussing, the failures of the Democratic Party, the fact that Joe Biden was a walking corpse that couldn't inspire change, the fact that the Democratic Party leadership didn't effectively get behind Kamala, and Kamala didn't do herself any favors because she couldn't put forth the bold vision. She was too tethered and loyal to Biden. She wouldn't part on Gaza. She wouldn't, chart a new Green New Deal. She wouldn't talk about capping rent prices, whatever, something to make the people really be excited to show up. She didn't even say that she was going to day one legalize weed and run with that all the time. She had nothing to offer.
I think eventually she did say she was going to legalize weed, but it was like too late.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a number one campaign issue. It's such an easy issue. It's
go like, on Rogan and say that, right? Like, dispel some of the cop stuff then, if you're going to do, but go on.
No, you're totally right. I think they should have leaned into that. However, it's led to this kind of complacency amongst the general public. It's led to this lack of resistance, and something that we've been trying to really gin up amongst our audience is a desire to resist the craziness. There's so much normalization. Donald Trump just scammed the American people out of $55 billion with the crypto scam. Nobody's even talking about it. We haven't talked about the fact that he's trying to roll back birthright citizenship, okay, in a way that it struck me. When I first read that, I was laying in bed next to my girlfriend, and she was like, Zach, I'm pretty sure under this law, I wouldn't have been born a citizen, right? And I was like, holy shit. This is like, in a weird way, like now it's like insanely personal for me on a way that it hadn't been before. So it just blew my fucking mind. And it's crazy. And I think AOC, despite the criticism that we just offered her, kind of does a great job going on independent or, kind of crossing the line between independent. It's Jon Stewart's personal podcast. And talking about this, I wanted to get your reaction to it quickly, Emma.
Sure.
What makes this go around with Trump so much more dangerous than the first time around is exactly what you're saying. It's that he is much more normalized this time around than he was the first time. The first time, people were really on edge. They were on guard. They were very vigilant about any break that he would have with these norms. This time, the norms are becoming him. Like the norms are embracing him. Even these like little things that people may not, like everyday working people may not care about, but they are strong cultural signals. Oscar de la Renta, like dressing all of the women, like there's all these cultural symbols, right?
I see, participating now in this when they wouldn't have participated in the past.
Exactly, exactly. So like all of these people that were scared before about like being associated with him from the most common basic level to the most elite level, they're all like they're all in now, because this is now a billionaire feeding frenzy. It is a kiss ass race,
man.
It is, how can I show how much fealty I have to Donald Trump in order to get my digs. And I think what's really important for people to understand, and like now and every day of this administration, is that you're being ripped off. You're being ripped off, dude. Like everyone is being ripped off. And
that's the main thing I wanted to get your reaction to. How do we get the American people fired up and outraged about the fact that they have been scammed, they have been duped, they have been bamboozled? You know, we heard constantly all these right-wingers talk about, oh, it was the single greatest upward transfer of wealth during COVID when they did the bailouts. And I was not a big fan of the bailouts, but I thought the American people did deserve those COVID checks. It was a whole bit of hysteria. None of those people have anything to say, as Donald Trump does one of the greatest upward transfers of wealth. The fact that he's now up for sale on a global market of untraceable finances, where he's boasting about his ability to take bribes now. Okay. He's going to have Jared Kushner opening up fucking luxury real estate condos in Gaza. Yep. And overlooking the beaches, and everybody is going to be praising him for doing a ceasefire. And it's like, I am so glad for any moment that there is no suffering in Gaza. Absolutely cannot fathom the horror of any of those people. It goes without saying, none of us could fathom that. But at the same time, guys, when you cheerlead that, you are playing right into him and Netanyahu's hand. There's a reason that Benjamin Netanyahu's wife was eating dinner with him and Lindsey Graham, and had a great seat at inauguration and all that going on. How do we bring back the resistance? You know, Gavin made the point on Twitter, I think it was a day ago, that it has to be punk rock. It has to be edgy. It has to be cool. It can't be liberal coded. It has to be outsider coded. We have to take back this outsider-ness.
Yeah, it can't be a defense of the pre-Trump status quo.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do we go about that, Emma?
That's a great question, and like great framing by both of you guys, because it can't COVID was such a shock. I mean, it really was like almost reverse shock doctrine, where it was such a shock to folks that the desire to return to anything that resembled normalcy was why Biden won. I mean,
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there.